Welcome to another episode of Save Point Stories, my podcast where I have conversations with guests about their relationship with games and the connections that they make and the experiences they've had along the way and over the years and the impression it's left on their lives. I'm your host, Kurosh, and in season one here, I've dialogued about this and talked about how we're bringing a bunch of guests on the show and wanted to get into it and talk about it. And I'm very lucky today to have one of the guests I'm very excited about for season one. We've had a great season so far, and it doesn't stop here. So I want to introduce my guest here today. He's one of the co-hosts of the wildly successful, internationally renowned podcast 500 Tabs alongside his co-host Hannah Hill. He's the owner of Blacksmith Pictures. He's an author. He's a director of critically acclaimed films. He's an illustrator. You may have seen his work at some conventions like Comic-Con maybe. He's a podcaster, a panelist. He's an all-around Renaissance man in some circles, and he's a pretty genuinely nice guy to chat with too. He's sometimes referred to as one of the princes of Persia himself. Cryptids love him. Blacksmiths tolerate him. Please welcome. Thank you, Kaveh, for being here today.
Oh my God! Can you call my parents and give them that introduction?
I was very
I don't even
excited
know what to say to that. Oh my God! I'm like, whoa, is that
am
really
I
what
wrong? Am I wrong about any of that?
I mean, most of it, but yeah. I mean, technically, I do those things. I don't know if I do any of them well, but yeah. Thank you. Oh wow! Spotlight's on me. Shit, yeah. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm very excited to discuss today's game, and I'm excited that you're branching out into newer territory in terms of what your new shows are going to be. I'm excited to see how you do this one and where you're going with it. I was really excited when you asked me to do this based on what you said it was going to be. So I said, "Oh, this is going to be fun." I'm excited.
It's a good time. And yeah, is there anything in specific? Like I want to kind of preface our history, and I won't go in as a romanticized way as I did in the past with our last conversation. But I remember seeing you at Comic-Con in San Diego. You were part of one of the MENA representation panels regarding pop culture and in the entertainment industry. And I had a chat with you briefly after, and I think we just started chatting ever since then. I was lucky to be on your podcast with Hannah, who's also an amazing. I'm planning to have her on the show later this season, so look for that.
That's gonna be exciting.
But good times.
No, I think I think good times. We just met at the panel, and then we've been sort of friends since.
So
we can give the professional bona fides, but really it's just like, hey, you're a nice guy. I like talking to you. It's basically that's what most professional relationships come down to. I'm just like, I like that guy. I'll talk to him again. Sure, why not?
I feel like that's what the good ones are. It's like, there's other ones you're like, okay, I got to do this. We got to logistically work together. Sometimes you're like, no, you're cool. Let's find reasons to work together. So and on that note, what game have you brought today that means a lot to you?
So my game that I've decided to submit for your show is the original 8-bit NES version of the game Contra. Which, of course, has gone on for, I don't know, 30-something years now. Almost 40 years, I think. Oh, God, I'm so old. But the original arcade port to the Nintendo is the first game that I wanted to discuss today.
Great. And I will give a brief overview for fans that are maybe unfamiliar with the game, or maybe this is their first time learning about it. They're about to get educated. So Contra is a game that came out in 1987. It's a run and gun video game developed and published by Konami. Originally for arcades, as you said. It was set in the distant future year of 2633 AD, where the evil Red Falcon organization has set base on the fictional Galuga archipelago near New Zealand in a plot to wipe out humanity. Two commandos, Bill Reiser and Lance Bean, of the Earth Marines Corps Contra unit, an elite group of soldiers specialized in guerrilla warfare, are sent to the island to destroy the enemy forces and uncover the true nature of the alien entity controlling them. So,
it's a hell of a description.
they were wild with these premises.
Yeah.
Please, Kaveh, tell me, why does this game mean so much to you?
So, oh man, I don't even know where to begin. There's so much. So I'll start first with how I came to own the game.
Okay. Your
And
introduction,
then-
set the scene.
Yeah, so set the scene. So I think I mentioned this the last time we recorded when we were talking about Prince of Persia, which was that I'm originally from California. I'm from the Bay Area, but I went to elementary school back east. which was a very, very different experience during the school year than it was in the summertime. So in the summertimes, I would always come back to California and feel like I was sort of a normal person again. But
Okay.
every summer we would go, and I would stay with my grandmother and go see cousins and hang out with them. But the point of the story is that I can't remember exactly what age. I must have been 6 or 7. It was after one of those long trips that we had been to California for the summer, and I came back home. And unfortunately, at that time, my dad, of course, still had to work. So he would maybe come like for a brief visit to California occasionally when we were there. But for the most part, he would be gone for those couple months. But one year when I came back, again, 6 or 7 years old, he, I guess, had gone to some garage sale or something at some point when he was by himself, and he found the game Contra. And it wasn't like it wasn't in the box, it wasn't anything, it was just sort of a loose cartridge that he picked up. And what was so weird about it was that my dad was a person who, I don't know if you experienced this, but particularly with immigrant parents, they were just like, video games are stupid and they rot your brains and they ruin everything. And it was not how it is now, in which everybody who's like sort of in the, people who are adults now all have video games as the reference point that they grew up with. But to them, that was like, what the hell is this thing? It's sort of like the TikTok of its day, where that was brain rot, etc. So my dad was not a person who particularly liked me playing games. And yet for some reason, after this one trip when we were gone, he had bought this game Contra, which I had also never heard of and none of my friends owned, and I didn't know what it was. So it was really peculiar. And I wondered, I don't know, I actually never asked him about this. Actually, even if I did ask him about this, I'm sure he would have no memory of it and have no idea why. But in my mind, I think in retrospect, I look at it, I'm like, I wonder if my dad was just sort of like, it's weird that you're not here, and he thought of me and he just wanted to get me a game because he missed me, and then that was just the game that was there. Not knowing what the game was or what the context of the game was, which is what's ultimately ends up being really like funny and ironic about it. But
yeah. I think something that's funny about that is, like, for me, I've had similar experiences where it feels like I could go the more wholesome way. I'm like, oh, they're thinking of me, they're kind, or they're just masochists, like all Persian parents are, and they're like, I need a new challenge. He's been acting too good. I need this to give him a reason to belittle him or to criticize him.
I don't know, man. It was weird, and it's the only time in all my childhood my dad ever just unprompted bought me a video game. It was the only time. So it was really strange. It was really odd. And of course, I remember playing it, and it's you. I'm assuming you've played it as well, right?
Yeah. It's a great game.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game. Although when I first had it, I think I got to the second level, and when it goes to that sort of let's call it 3D, quote unquote, the 3D aspect of it, where you're shooting forward and you're going through all those doors. I remember getting stuck because I didn't understand. Because again, I was very little. Yeah. I didn't really understand that, like, you're supposed to hit these specific points that make the walls explode so you can go on to the next section. So I just kept hitting the electrical fence and just being like, oh, I don't know. So it took me a little bit of time to figure out that, like, oh, I guess I have to shoot this other part, because you'd have to shoot a point in the wall before the sort of orb would reveal itself, and then you shoot that part that would explode it. So for the first, I don't know, a year or so when I played it, not consistently for a year, but just like the first year or so that I owned it, I remember being like, I was really good at the first level. Then I would get like a little bit into the second level and then be like, I don't know, until eventually somebody came over and was like, yeah, I think you're supposed to hit this part. And I was like, oh, there's all this other point of the game. You changed
my world.
Yeah. So that's sort of how I came to it first.
Okay. And was that also like, why would you say that first introduction to it and everything, is that where the meaning of it came, or is it something that, like, as the years have accumulated, you've had appreciation, or is it? Okay.
So it's one of those games where, so as a kid, it was just a fun run and gun, and I think, this is great. This is why I thought this would be a particularly fun one for you and I to discuss. But of course, the name. Right. So you gave the explanation of what the context of the story was, right? "Quote unquote" in the future. But of course, Contra is very clearly referencing the Iran-Contra affair. And so these are American troops going into Nicaragua in the 80s to try and fight like this communist takeover that was going on. The Red Falcon, by the way, being a clear reference to the communists. And for those of you who don't know, this was something that happened very famous during the Reagan administration, in which they were selling weapons to the Iranians, to Khomeini during the Iran-Iraq war, and then they were taking those funds to fund the guerrilla warfare to try and overthrow the communists in Nicaragua. So Contra is a reference to that. And so I think as a kid, I didn't really know what the Iran-Contra affair was, but I had heard the word Contra and I knew that it had something to do with Iran. And I think part of it was like, this feels like somehow like I'm connecting to my culture in a way. This is just 6-year-old, 7-year-old logic, right? I was like, oh, I'm being political by playing this game. I couldn't have articulated that at the time.
Activist since day one.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm on the wrong side. I'm on the side that's actually like...
No, you're trying to understand. You're like, I need to get the perspectives of the other side. Let me get the, Bill Reiser and Lance Bean over here. What are they really bringing to the table? And what am I not understanding about? Maybe I am the back. Empathy is a big thing.
Yeah. Khomeini gave me the money to do this firing in the jungle. So I think when I was little, I couldn't grasp exactly what it was, but I think there's this intuitive sense where it's like there's something about this that relates somehow to something about my parents and my place in this world and me living in the United States and what you would sort of see on the news. And I think as I've gotten older, like, maybe the past 10, 15 years, I've been able to sort of understand enough of history in the context of what led to, families like ours coming to the United States. And I'm able to put it in that context. And it just sort of became a lot more funny, frankly, that there was a video game that did that in the 80s. But
and it was one of the first you played.
And it was one of the first I played. But aside from that, when I was in high school, so I graduated high school in 2001. So this is around the year 2000 is when my friend Logan and we were in a band together. Oh. And he had his Nintendo somewhere like in a box, right? Okay. His original NES. And so, again, I sound like the old guy, but it's true. It's like the Nintendo revival had not really been a thing yet. Yeah. Because at that point, I think that was the first nostalgia cycle that happened, because at that point it was, PlayStation had come out. I don't know if PS2 had come out yet. I think it might have
PS2 just come out around in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like that's right around when that was making its presence known and everything.
Yeah, so, it had been N64 and it was PlayStation. I think Dreamcast had come out. So it was a lot of this like push into 3D and like how that space was really exploding and becoming a big deal. And I was about 16, 17 years old around that time, and Logan and I were playing, and he found it, and we hooked it up, and we were like, oh, Contra was we love this game. Like, so it became this sort of reconnection to our childhoods.
Oh, okay.
And we became really fixated on, we would have band practice, and then we would take a break, and then we would come, this is the most 17-year-old story ever, but we would go have a Mountain Dew and play Contra on the breaks in between.
What instrument did you play?
Believe it or not, I was the singer of the band. This is a punk band. I'm not a good singer, but I was a singer. Okay. And then that's where I learned guitar and bass and drums and stuff, just through playing in that band. But it was this thing that we became obsessed with, and it was part of this nostalgia cycle. And more importantly, Contra had some bangers. It's a banger-ass music. It's really good themes.
Yeah, it's some of those back in those days with the Mida like format too. They had to get really creative with how they had a repeating melody that you could get through for everything. So that I feel like that pressure puts a lot of creativity out there for the music side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we at some point, when we got to the second level, which was the electric fence 3D level, it's just dun, 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 dun. So we had been playing it in the breaks, and then we went back into the band room. We were like, man, that's such a good earwork. So we wrote like a song about Contra.
Inspired at the young age of 17, you took it, and now you're like, now I'm adding to the mythology of Contra.
Yeah, exactly, within our life. So it became this thing where it became integrated sort of into our personalities, and I played. We were both water polo players at that time. We were like swim team. Northern California's. I mean, most California high schoolers, it's so much aquatic stuff because it's warm and you're just in the pool all the time. So I was not a good water polo player, nor was I a good swimmer. I was fine. I ended up ultimately being, in school with kids who would go on to be in the Olympics. So like that's the level of talent that I was playing on the team with, which meant I was just bench warming all the time. I was not a person who was ever good at any of these sports or was ever a leader in that sense. However, the more Logan and I played Contra and the more we became fixated on this thing of like, okay, Nintendo's the thing. We made it like a thing. We made it like a cool thing when we weren't in the water. It was like this weird, like we hyped it up and we sort of had this almost control over the social situation when we weren't in the pool.
Just between you two, or with like amongst that your group of friends and stuff?
Yeah, amongst the team and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So it became this weird thing where like I was really good at it. We were both good at it, but I got like really like I think I was just really overcompensating for the fact that I was like, I never played, I'm a benchwarmer, but like for some reason people think it's cool that I'm good at this game. So I just got like really obsessive about it.
Yeah.
And so I sort of took it and ran with it. So Contra and just NES, that sort of revival in general, I'm not trying to say that I was like, oh, it was cool before it was cool, but it was like, it hadn't really been a thing at that point. It just sort of by chance became, I kind of caught that first wave of the nostalgia cycle. So
yeah.
I think it was like a little bit of a way for me to feel like I could take power back to myself in terms of feeling like I wasn't a total idiot loser, like, and I could be good at this game and like impress my friends on this team in a way, and garner some sort of respect in a weird way. So I really like got hardcore with it.
Okay, so it became a part of your identity in some ways for a bit of time there. I feel like sometimes it's a bit of like the ownership too of you're introducing it to others, and
exactly.
when you're able to do that, you can kind of not necessarily dictate the narrative, but more so shape how they're seeing it through your eyes. You're like, this is what I'm experiencing and I'm seeing when I play this game or had history with. Now I want you to see what I had and be on my level and kind of grow that. So that's okay.
And Contra's a game that's based on it's like so much of it's reflexes and it's memorization.
Yeah.
Right. That's what a lot of those old games were. Yeah, exactly. And that game is like, it's crazy. By the way, I went and played it the past couple of days just to sort of get back into Contra shape. Because I hadn't really played it that much.
I'm about to quiz you. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. And I was like, holy shit, this game is still crazy. It's insane. It's very hard. It's very
rigorous. Yeah, games did not, like, again, it being an arcade game, I think they built the game around a difficulty, and in order to encourage, okay, you got to put another quarter in, put a few more quarters in the pizzeria or wherever, bowling alley and stuff. And so that is always like a prevalent element of those earlier games, is that how do we keep this how do we make the little progress that you might make if you were at a home console with however many lives, and make this grueling and painful and really earn every new level you're getting and build that infamy.
Yeah, it's not a joke. And at my peak, I can say this, right? This is going to be like King of Kong, where I don't have like actual evidence of like having done this.
There's going to be an investigation and a scandal around this.
But I can say I had witnesses when I was there. I was with Logan and a couple of other friends. I was like, I did beat Contra once on one player mode and didn't die.
Well, that's interesting that you said that, because we got Logan right here.
Yeah. We got to call her in to verify.
He says otherwise.
Liar!
Did you? Okay, so another thing historically with this game and with games back then, there was an infamous Konami Code that was prevalent, and it had that code could be used in a variety of games, but most notoriously, it was with Contra on the NES system. Up, down, left, right, B, A, start.
Yeah.
And in Contra, what that did is it gave you a bunch of extra lives so that you had some forgiveness. Did you know about that code? Did you
Oh yeah, of course. It's like part of our cultural identity.
Well, because back then, like internet wasn't so much a thing, so it wasn't like, let me go on and see what the guides are saying and find it. It was so much like, hey, I heard if you do this, it was very back alley-esque, and so
that's what was so fun about it.
Yeah, there's a mystery about it, but it was also kind of like, wait, really? What else is if that's a thing? What else is like the possibilities kind of opened up, and how did you find out about it?
That's a good question. I don't remember who told me about it.
Your dad just slipped a note.
Yeah, my dad was like, by the way, he's an engineer, so he's not an engineer, but he's a scientist, so he's just like, I figured this part of it out. No, it must have been like a playground lunchtime kind of like discussion of some kid knew it and some kid told me about it, and then that's how it went. I don't actually. It's a good question though. I don't actually remember when I first learned about it. It feels like one of those things that you just all of us just always knew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost like you're born and like that's the first thing they teach you is like, here's how to walk and here's the Konami Code. These are the important things that you need to have.
You have what you need to survive through life now.
I was gonna say, so the way I ran with that too is like my Permafriends books, as you mentioned, that I write and illustrate books. So my Permafriends series, which is the short premise of it is like they take place in the future. It's about what happens when humans go extinct. It's all comedy stuff, but it's like we're not around to explain anything as to why we did them or what like the meaning of anything is. And then so these animals and robots sort of run with them in weird ways. So the central villain of the second book for Quest for the Crimson Code, it's this fat cat and his name is Brisket. And the whole thing is like Brisket is sort of like this weird biohacker, and he's died 8 times and he's on his last life, and he's gotten fat because he's filled with blood, because all he's doing is trying to find, it's specifically what the reference to is that he's trying to find the Konami Code, because he heard in these old stories that there's a code that gives people 30 lives. So it's this cat trying to regain his life, trying to get 30 lives so he can live longer. And so he has this assistant parakeet who just keeps like kidnapping all these different animals and just trying to be like, is it in this code? Is it in this? He thinks it's a genetic code. So that becomes the central premise of that story. In terms of like what you're saying of like where it's influenced, I'm like, I still write about it. I still think about that Konami Code, and I've written a whole stupid sci-fi story about it because it's so ingrained in me.
That's so wild. Did you ever? Okay, no, there's so much to unpack there that I'm thinking of like what it meant in the fictional world of like immortality for this cat. Then how did you implement it and everything? And did you? So just to ask as well, did you, in your infamous victory of the game, was the use of the Konami Code? Did you use the Konami Code?
I don't remember if I input. The point is, I didn't die.
Yeah.
So I don't remember if I had put it in and then just ended up not dying, or if I like raw dogged it, so to speak, and went in with like the standard 3 lives. That detail I don't remember. All I remember is that I did beat it without dying once. It's possible. I mean, also when I was looking up stuff for this to remember, I've seen there's like whatever playthroughs where somebody doesn't die.
So much mystery. No, but like to hear then like it started like the way you and your dad connected with it, the way you and your friend Logan connected with it, and now how you then translate it to the work that you do. That's and the music that you've made too.
Yeah, literally.
Is that track out there anywhere?
No, I don't think so. I think it's on some burned CD that him and I have.
I'm gonna get in touch with the host of Hot Ones, and he'll find it because he finds everything.
Honestly, that's true. That is something that he would end up talking about.
That's okay. So it like, I mean, I again, there's so many other elements to this too that I feel like in the '80s culture and the early '90s stuff too. The aesthetic is also a thing. You talked about like how historically it connected with you and everything.
Yeah.
But in a weird way, I think also in the medium at the time, just in pop culture and movies, like guys like Arnold and Stallone were prevalent. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but for me and my dad, that's what we bonded over. We always like, I associate my dad with Arnold, Stallone, and Bruce Willis so much in the weirdest way that I felt like there was that action 80s kind of tone to it. Did any of those... like, did that have a similar impact on you or impression on you in terms of like the film? I know you're very much in the film and in the story basis too of like what you do and everything. And did that have anything of an impact in its own weird way?
That's an interesting question, because my mom basically like didn't care what I watched, to the point where I watched a lot of stuff that was inappropriate for my age at that time. I was probably
RoboCop at 8.
No. So the funny thing is that the one thing that my mom didn't like was violence. Because if you remember too, like in the 80s, like it's kind of like what you're talking about. Like the 80s violence was really, or it was cartoony almost.
Yeah.
It was like predators, like heads exploding and like bullets everywhere. And like, even though part of that is that those things were meant to be satirical, like particularly like you referenced like RoboCop or like Total Recall, I guess that's 1990. But some of it was meant to poke fun at that.
Yeah.
But my mom was actually that's the one hard line that she had. She was like, no, like she didn't like Arnold movies. She didn't like me watching like violent movies or action movies. So I actually didn't grow up watching action movies like that as a kid. That was the one thing. I watched totally inappropriate like adult dramas, but I didn't watch a lot of like violent
You were
movies.
very in touch with your emotions, but
Very much
on the,
so,
on the
yeah.
violence side of things, you're like, no, I can't. But then that's interesting in that the gaming, like, did she have any, like, did she ever see you playing Contra or games like Contra?
Yeah, I think for her it was like, well, whatever, he needs to let out his whatever frustration in the game, because I was like, again, I was a pretty, I wouldn't say quiet kid in the sense that like I didn't talk. Clearly I talk a lot, but I was like, I've always been very like, I'll keep to myself. Like I'm fine, not necessarily like my mom and sister still like laugh about this. We're like, I don't need supervision. I never really needed much supervision as a kid. Like I'll just go into a room. And I guess now that sounds more like a school shooter type thing. Where like, I'll just go into a room and I'll be fine. But like,
No,
I'll
it's
go into
independence and agency.
Yeah,
and, yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I was very, I'm a Montessori kid. Like I took really well to it. I was happy to just be like, oh, I'll just play this game and it's fine. I don't really want to fight people. Like I just like video games, or I like comic books, or I like reading, or I like drawing a bunch of stuff. So I think
No, go ahead. You think that?
I was gonna say, I think because it didn't necessarily come out in the ways where like I was playing violent video games and then I was acting violent as a result of it. Like that was never the case with me. Like I never made that connection to be like, oh, I punched someone in Mortal Kombat, so now I'm gonna start beating the shit out of kids at school. Like I always understood that I was like, no, this is a game. It's just for fun. Like it's whatever. It doesn't. Like, it's vicarious is not the right word, but it's just sort of it's a fantasy that you're in, and I could always delineate between those two things. So I guess maybe at that point, I mean, again, maybe you can probably speak to this as well, is that particularly immigrant parents, I think they had a lot of ideas of what they were trying to implement on us, but maybe some parts were they just missed it. It might have just been that something that she didn't really think it through and just was like, well, whatever. She's too busy trying to do all this other stuff. I don't know. You'd have to ask her, unfortunately. I don't really have a clear answer for you.
No, it's just an observation of like you observe that from our perspective, and I think for me, again, there could be any number of things, but like I think there's always an interesting thing of there's an emphasis in one medium of protection of censorship, or like my folks, I don't think there was as much in that in the film space. I was watching like I said, like the Terminators or whatever else, but when it came to the games I was playing, because I was engaging with it, there was an added concern, and I think also an unfamiliarity. The way you said, like your dad was like, "Why this is brain rot?" So the fact that it's brain rot and it's of this nature. I don't know, and so fear, but because they knew film, they're like, all right, unless he showed some signs or something. It's interesting as you just talk about it. It's like, what did we grow up with, and how did that may or may not like impact where we're at now of like how we engage with all of these art forms and stuff. So I always find that interesting.
I think also, my dad, he, as is still the case in Iran, you have mandatory military service for 2 years. So my dad had to do it. My dad is very like, my dad's a scientist. My dad is like there's no bravado. Like my dad's just a dork. And I think he grew up poor. Like he grew up from a poor area in Iran and like kind of like got himself out with his smarts, right? Came to the United States, got a PhD, like was a company man for so many years. And like, he is not on that end of the spectrum at all. And I think he was always really like, I don't want to say like anti-military necessarily in that sense. Like I think my dad's, he's not dumb. Like he understands the point of like, you need to have one. But I think particularly like, again, this is the 80s. This is like, Iran is in the middle of like wars. Like they saw how that country was destroyed by military propaganda, and like how people were sort of, particularly kids at that time. I mean, not to get too dark with it, but like, I think they were just really scared of like, we don't want you to think that, war or weapons or guns or any of this kind of stuff is appropriate, or it is how humanity goes forward kind of thing almost. It was very like, my dad's an intellectual in that sense where he's like, absolutely not. This is not a thing that you want. And my mom understood that as well. They were both very like, we're not here to glorify military. We're not here to glorify kill. I should say not military, but like not senseless killing. And they were cognizant of the propaganda element of it. And I think that's what they were trying to protect me from in that space.
Interesting. Okay, I kind of want to go in more in the vein of the game space as well a little bit. You've revisited it a few times. Going into some of the bits of it, did you always have a preference on which of the two characters, or did it matter to you at all?
I mean, you always want to be first player, obviously, but
but when you played like with your friend Logan or like anything, was it always like, okay, I'm first player? Or
I think I was always first player because I was more insane and I was more like obsessive about it. Not because Logan was bad at it. I think he was just sort of like, okay, you're clearly you're working some stuff out with this game. You're having some, you're working through something emotionally here that you're trying to. So I was like, yo, we did. So I think I just ended up being first player, but I didn't necessarily have a preference for red or blue in this. They play the same. It doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah, and I think it was always like when you see the cover art, you're always like, oh, I like that guy or I like that. Yeah. And you come up with your own stories as to their lore and stuff.
No, but it was always like, it's a lot of communicating too when you play with the second player. It's a lot of like, okay, I'm going to take this. Like, you go to the top part and I'll go to the bottom part. You kill this. Again, it's like, it's memorization and it's a lot of communication. I'm realizing this now. It sort of reminds me of, what's the game on Switch? Overcooked.
Oh, yeah.
You're sort of all screaming at each other, like one of those co-op games where you're like, okay, you got to do this right here. Like, get the patty. I'm bringing this over. It was sort of the early version of that where you're like, okay, this guy's going to come up here. And like, that's what the pattern is. So you need to make sure you shoot this. Well, I take the top part and then I'm going to take the spread gun. You get like the machine gun at this next power up. It's a lot of like constant communication in order to make it through and beat that game.
And so, on the note of you mentioning Overcooked, I know you're not like in the weeds of games all the time, but I know you still play games to some degree to this day.
Yeah, not as much. It's like guitar playing. I'm just like, not as much as I should be, not as much as I'd like to, but
you have you have a relationship with it as a medium. Yeah. No, has that changed, or has it? Do you still seek out games similar to Contra, or do you seek out like you mentioned Overcooked? There's a through line there of like, there's that cooperative play, the chaos, or is your taste has it evolved or changed anyway?
I think the console dictates kind of what your taste ends up being, obviously, right? So if I was a PS5 guy, I think my tastes would be very different in terms of games, but I think by virtue of the fact that I have a Switch, it does tend to gear more towards, I don't know if you call them smaller games or like more side scrollery, like it's in that Nintendo space, and Nintendo embraces the nostalgia more in the remasters than say stuff on PlayStation. So it's an interesting question. I wonder how much of my taste is just dictated by the fact that that's the console that I have, as opposed to like me seeking that out.
Yeah, I guess it's like a chicken and the egg kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think part of what I liked about the Switch is that it felt more fun and it felt light. It felt like less. I think you can go two ways in gaming, right? It's kind of similar to most media of like podcasts or like short form video or like a 3-hour conversation with somebody. It's like I think as I've gotten older, I'm like, I don't really want to spend 5 hours a day on a game. It's not necessarily as appealing to me just because I don't have the time and I don't have the, the attention span to do that.
Yeah.
I think if I was in my 20s, unless it's like, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto 6 that's going to come out. I keep telling my wife, I'm just like, I'm going to have to buy a PlayStation. I don't want to do this and I don't have the money and I don't have the time, but I feel an obligation because I love the Grand Theft Auto games. And I can't not play it when it comes out. So that's the only one on the horizon that I can think of. But otherwise, I like the idea of like a kind of short and sweet, fun game that doesn't make me go insane. That being said, I feel like a lot of what I've played lately in the past maybe year or two tends to be, reminiscent, let's say, of the old school platform, of the old school like side scroller type stuff. So it's like, I loved Mario Wonder that came out. I was like, this is the best. Like, it reminds me of the old school stuff. And I still played the new Mario games and stuff too. But the excitement, again, I think to me is more of it's a nostalgia thing more than it is like because newer games, some of them I don't necessarily like the format. Like I don't like the what's the game that everyone loves? Hades. I don't know what's that style called where it's like you play it all the way through and then if you die you have to start all the way over, and it's
the
like,
roguelite. Roguelike.
That just stresses me out. It's not fun. It's too much anxiety. I don't dislike the game, to be clear. Like I'm saying that I don't like that format.
That framework,
that framework is too much for me. I'm like, I'm not trying to like have a panic attack. I'm trying to like chill, like have some fun, maybe play a game where I'm like, talking a lot to the person I'm playing with. I like the co-op stuff.
That's where I was kind of like, I sometimes with those experiences, I feel like, and based on what you were sharing, it could either go into like, it allows you to go into a space and just really relax and, have your own agency and independence and do your own thing.
Yeah. Or
you kind of have that relationship where it's a means to a conversation with a friend or a bond with a friend, like you said, within high school. And, your friends now or your wife or anyone like that of like, I just want a means to like chill and hang out whether it be this game or it be a cup of coffee or something. So it's always
Yeah.
like, I think that plus so many times you hear folks like of our generation talking about games like, man, they don't make them like they used to, so I only look for the ones that I used to grow up with. I'm like, there's elements of it, and like I think a lot of what you pointed out, there's the essence of that in games like Mario Wonder, and there's essence of that, and it's like, oh, I find it, I find the through lines as I go. So that's always
Yeah.
that's always fun and interesting. Would you say, and keeping all of the stories you've shared about Contra, has your opinion of Contra changed since that first time, or has it just grown and kind of like a wine, like it's now had layers to it?
You mean in terms of like, what do you mean specifically? Like the actual game, like the
No, just like your relationship. You're like,
or...
oh, I liked it, versus now I'm like, wow, there's all these different. Like, I'm just taking a stab at it. Of you went from, oh, this is just a game like my dad gave me, and now I'm like, oh, now there's deep historical roots that are tied, oddly to my culture, and all these different things. Like, I feel like in outside of any of the ways you've mentioned, is there anything else that has like changed or your perspective on it or anything over these years?
No, I think sort of what you're talking about, like it's aged like a fine wine. I think it's like a what is it called? A snapshot of a moment of like my childhood. And I think even independent of that game, it's a really fun game. It is a fun game. Like, even if it wasn't Contra, if it was called something else, which I know it was, like in Europe and
in a couple other countries that had a few different
stuff. Yeah, because Germany had some crazy like laws where you couldn't kill people. So just the gameplay itself, I will say this is having played the game literally this morning before we recorded. I'm like, it's still fun.
Okay, so you think it still holds up then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think I wonder how kids today play it. I don't know if they're more, it's just like games are so different. It's not a bad thing either. It's just like, I don't know if they understand how to think about it in terms of being flat as opposed to being dimensional.
I so often I hear today when I speak to developers, they're testing the games out there, and the first thing kids do, rather than picking up the controller, they go to whatever the screen that the game is being tested on, and they try touching the screen.
Oh, that's so strange.
And I'm like, oh my god, that is such a that is not just one generation shift, that is several now for me. I'm like,
that's unreal.
Oh my god, that aged me.
So old.
And I think, like you said, there's certain unwritten rules that you just kind of get coded in at an early age. That has become basic language for you now as you go forward with whatever other game you play. I think that's the same for whatever the next generation is. Like, whatever they started with is kind of shaping what they understand of that space. Like, okay, we're in a game space, left to right. We know we had Mario. We're like, always go left to right. That's like just in the code, and this is what this means. That's what that means. It's not told to you, but you understand it.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the context, again, it's funny. The irony of my parents being like, we don't want you to be involved in military propaganda, and yet my father accidentally buying Contra, which is literally military propaganda, playing as the person who was funded by the U.S. government in the Iran-Iraq War. It's just like the levels of irony to me is just like, it's so indicative of my sense of humor of like, of course that's what happened. Of course that's how it goes, right? Of course. No matter how hard you try to be one thing, like life finds a way, right? It comes back around. So I think, and again, I don't know enough about the history of the development of the game, and I don't get the sense that these guys were necessarily like trying to make like a political whatever. I think, like, kind of to your point, like these guys, a lot of the ones in the 80s who were developing these games, I think they all that it was so early on in the medium that they were like, well, we love action movies and we love Schwarzenegger, so like, what if Arnold Schwarzenegger was in Nicaragua trying to fight this thing? And then, you know what I mean? It's just, I feel like that's really all it was. I don't think it was like meant to be anything more sophisticated than that in terms of the thought process. So it's like, here's a historical event that's happened, or here's like a political event that's happening, and here's a muscle guy that's going to go kill him. And then whatever, it's red. That's fine. Communism, done.
Yeah. Stamp, done. Book it, sell it, ship it.
Yeah. So, but I think it is fascinating. And I think it's really fun that it has woven back in and out of my life, like over the course of those, I don't know, what is it? You said 87 was the year it came out right now, right? It was almost 40 years.
Originally, it was 87, on arcades.
Yeah, so nearly 40 years. Like, basically, like, as long as I've been alive, this game has more or less had some sort of prevalence in my life. Like, whether it was in the foreground or in the background, it's kind of funny. And again, being the one title that is outright political in it literally right there in the title is just, that's such, again, it's another metaphor for like, yeah, that's what it's like to grow up as the child of Iranian immigrants. It's I was talking about this with Hannah in one of our episodes lately, where people were everything that's happening in the government right now, and people are like freaking out and being like, how am I supposed to tell my children about what's happening with the department of whatever and like politics, and like they don't know it. And I was laughing and I said, oh man, let me tell you what was like growing up for us, because it was like there was nothing held back. It was like, again, way too young to just be like, you can't trust the government, everyone's out to kill us, you have no idea if like a religious dictator is going to come over, trust no one, like everything is going to go to shit at any moment. Yeah, survive. You're like, I'm 6, but okay, got it.
Can you give me some quarters, please?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's so. I want to get to closing points.
Sure.
One of the last questions I had. I mean, you said it. You believe it holds up. I agree with you. If you were to introduce this game to someone who's never played it, what would you tell them?
Oh man, am I introducing it to a young person now, or like a person our age?
Let's do person our age.
Person our age.
Yeah, we're just hanging out, and someone's like, "I never played Contra. What's Contra?" And
I mean,
like,
honestly, I think I would take the political angle of it. Just be like, "Oh, did you ever wonder what it was like to play a CIA operative video game?" Essentially, I mean, like that's the pitch that I would give.
Okay.
Like, this is straight up propaganda, which I think is fun. I mean, I don't agree with the propaganda, but the fact that it exists is really funny.
On the note of Contra, because that game had more that followed it, did you ever go on and look for those other ones? Like, did you ever want to be like, oh, I want to play the next one or the sequel?
Yeah. I think I played that, and then it's Super C, then it's Contra 3: The Alien Wars.
Yeah.
I played Contra 3 as well. Again, the main sort of like my home base was the original.
Okay.
But I definitely played all 3 of them in terms of the 3 originals that were Nintendo and Super Nintendo. And then I don't think I downloaded the demo of what's the one on Switch? I want to say Galaga. It's not Galaga. It's like Contra Galaga something.
It's like a Contra collection, I think, or something to that.
No, there's a new Contra game on Switch as well. There's both. There's also the collection, and then it's not Galaga. I don't know. It's at all. I don't know why that's the first. Should I look it up? I can't remember.
Sure, you can look it
up. Oh, is it Galuga? Yeah. Contra Operation Galuga.
We'll see what historical events they riffed off.
Yeah, right.
Maybe the Contra series will continue and parody current events.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any closing thoughts on your history, your experiences, your memories with Contra, and just?
No, I'm trying to think.
Because it sounds like it shapes so much of you. It's something I never realized, that level of involvement in your life.
Yeah, I think it's funny. It's like these codes, like the Konami Code is such a funny, like we said, what we were talking about earlier. Like, it's so funny that there are these things that I think part of what I miss about it, right, is that, like, again, different time, right? But there is a convenience to going on the internet and just typing in what's the Konami Code, and then you get it, and it's the first search, and you haven't talked to anyone, and you haven't engaged in anything, and you've just gotten the exact thing that you want directly. And that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I will say that, like, kind of to your point, if you're like, where did you learn it? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it felt like it was a thing I always knew, but it was like something all of us talked about. And there was this urgency in those days at lunch to just be like, okay, now we have to discuss. Like, it was like a conference that we would have all the time to like discuss these things. Like we were trading stocks or something. It was like, it was so important to like share information. Yeah. It was like, did you figure this out? Like, what is about this? Or like, how does this work? Do you know? Oh, I got an older brother, or like I got an older cousin that told me. Like, there's something really fun about that aspect of it that I really miss from those days. That I think it's, some of it has just changed, right? And it's evolved to being online. And I think there's something beautiful about, for example, connecting with somebody on the other side of the world and being able to have those conversations. I think that's great. I think what's missing though is being able to just go to this place that's in your own neighborhood and have those discussions. It seems you know, I'm of two minds about it, where it's like, it's great to make a friend on the other side of the world, but it's also kind of sad that you can't just go to a person who might be directly across the street from you and, you know, longing for that same kind of experience. But because of these sort of digital barriers that we've put between us, you're not able to engage in that. And so I don't know. I think that's sort of what I think about too when I think about these games. It's like there's these weird stories and these emotional connections that you have to it, and so much of it is just chance, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think my dad, and again, I think I said this at the beginning, like my dad, it wasn't like a thing that he bonded with me over. I think it was just this weird, my dad thought, and he never even said any of this to me. I think my dad just sort of thought, like, maybe thought about me in some moment and like bought this thing, and then he just gave it to me, and he never talked to me about the game. He never sat and played it with me. He was never like, what is this? It was just this weird, like almost an afterthought maybe for him on some level, but like in my dad's sort of like science-y, like unemotional brain, I think that was his way of sort of being like, I thought of you, but he wouldn't have said that. And it's funny that like a small gesture like that can sort of blossom into this like lifelong thing. I think if it was a bad game, it might have not been as important, right? If it was some terrible game that I didn't like, but it was just, that's just a chance that someone took. And it's kind of interesting. And part of it, I'm sure too, was that it was cheap. I'm sure it was not like a full price, like $50, $60 game. It might have been like $10. And then I always think about that story. It's like, who's the kid that bought Contra that had to give it and sell it at a garage sale? Like, were their parents mad at them? Like, is this some weird curse that was passed on to me? Like, who knows?
They couldn't get past the electric doors.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He's just like, this game sucks.
They're like, give it to someone, sell it. I don't want it.
But yeah, it's so weird to think about that like you have no idea what these moments are that you're going to latch onto and then like build a relationship with something for the rest of your life. And again, totally by chance. Yeah, totally by chance that this Persian immigrant would buy this game called Contra and have no idea what it is.
The divine comedy that is.
Yeah, honestly, it's a perfect way of putting it. It's the divine comedy.
Exactly I love hearing like how it's in play, and I'm very curious where else in your life it's going to continue to influence and impact you and sprout out in its own way of like your creativity and everything that you've done. Maybe you'll make a film, a short film or something. I don't know.
It'll creep in somewhere. It's
somewhere.
Like you said, it's not just how I think about games. It's also just how I think about the world and stuff that's fun and stuff that like I'm interested in. It's like, what if we had a code that we could put in and basically get 30 lives in real life
this summer?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Kaveh, thank you so much again for being on the show today and sharing these stories. I loved hearing so much about how it connected with you, Contra, and has made so much of an impact. I do want to say something that this season, it's been a very the premise is what I've set out to do, but I wanted to, and I plan to have a level of theme or something as I go into the future. And what I've decided with how I've shaped season 1 is the theme is not necessarily the topics, but more so the guests and what the guests mean to me. And everyone I've brought on to be part of season 1 for me has been an influence either in my past, my present, or helping me grow into the future. And it's a way of me saying like, thank you for that. So I wanted to say you've been a big influence on me since that panel. And it's been a big help. And like, just this friendship that has grown out of it has been like a part of that divine comedy of like, oh, who knew, we would find such friendships between us. And I appreciate that very much. So I want to say thank you for that.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. I'm really glad to have met you and to have, flourished into something. I'm excited to go or talk about our next idea that I had texted you about, which
I'm very excited for that.
We'll keep under wraps for now. Whenever I don't know what format that will take, but yeah, it's nice to have somebody that I can talk to about that understands. Again, I not to get all DEI about it, but like somebody who I'm like, it's a very different experience to have a shorthand with somebody where I'm like, you understand this, like this is what you grew up with, like I don't have to explain this to you of like, this is why it's weird that we were playing the game Contra. Like, I think it's so wonderful to have somebody who I can talk to and share stories with that just understands it inherently. There's not a lot of people in that space necessarily who are putting out things like this. So I'm very excited that you're doing this. I'm very excited and honored to have been asked to be on your first season, and I'm very grateful for our friendship as well. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the opportunity I want to give you to give to our fans. Is there anything you want to plug, your social platforms or anything, or projects you're working on, any upcoming works? This episode, I will preface, will probably air sometime in March, April of 2025. So with that in mind, please, speak to our viewers.
So in terms of what I referenced directly on the show, if you go to blacksmithfilms.com, that's my website. I do have a store, and you can buy my books there. So the book you're looking for, if you want to know about the Contra Code, the plug. Do I have it? I think I can. I don't see it on my counter right now, unfortunately. My bookshelf. It's somewhere in a box.
Because it's sold out. Is why.
Yeah, right. It's all. Hold on. Is this terrible? If I let me see.
No, you're good. You're good. For audio listeners, he's looking on his bookshelf for the book he was referring to, where the fat cat was doing the Contra Code, or seeking the Contra Code for the extra lives, so that, and I'll have it in the show notes as well, where we can link it and stuff. The frustrations grow as he's pacing around his office, looking for this highly sought after limited edition blacksmith. It's just it's falling off shelves is what it's doing. But I think we found it.
Here we go. It's this one.
The Quest for the Crimson Code.
Yeah,
Permafriends
book 2.
I'll make sure to link that in the show notes.
Yeah, that's the second book in the series, but that's specifically the one in which I wrote the code into. But you know what? I actually have all my books here now, so you can also get the first Permafriends book, Curse of the Coal Eyes, and then these are actually my old. No, I don't want to show these ones. These are these are the initial copies I did of these things with these the proofs before I actually solidified exactly what the aesthetic of it was. So they were not meant to be shown, but except for that one book. Anyway, okay. But yes, blacksmithfilms.com. You can go if you're interested in that story. It's a fun one. I had a lot of fun doing that one. Additionally, as you mentioned, I do host a podcast myself. It's called 500 Open Tabs. That's available anywhere you listen to podcasts, and YouTube, of course. We're trying to growing a YouTube audience is tough, man.
It's crazy.
It's tricky. You can the numbers from the disparity between YouTube and actual downloads for the podcast is so vast. But yeah, so if you guys can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you have any ideas on how the hell I'm supposed to get that channel to blow up, let me know.
Yeah, you and Hannah have a great show on 500 Tabs. I love listening to it. I've loved being on it.
We love having you on it. Yeah, you came on and talked about Magic the Gathering, and I disassociated for 30 minutes. It was a lot of fun. Everyone made fun of me. It was great. We had a lot of fun. And then, so you said this is coming out in March or April, right? So
around then. Yeah.
At this point, I will be getting ready for C2E2. Which is the Chicago Comic-Con. I'm going to be tabling there in Artist Alley. So if you're in the Chicago area and you're going to be at C2E2, please come see me. You can also buy a book there in person if you'd like, and meet me, and then I'll sign it and stuff. And, at Permafriends is my handle on Instagram. That's where I'll be putting all my updates. I'm also on, what's the other one? Blue Sky, although I'm trying to be less on Blue Sky because it's already turned into this anxiety machine.
All social media has that. Yeah. I'm like, I can only manage so much of it, but yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I encourage, I'll make sure, again, everything that you've promoted and mentioned is in our show notes so that fans can find you, get in touch with you, pester you, and bug you about all these different aspects of Konami codes and your work and everything in the future. And again, thank you to the listeners and viewers for watching another one of our episodes of Save Point Stories, where we just talk about the connections we have and the experiences with games and where that makes an impact on us. And again, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next Save Point.